Consent has unfortunately become kind of a loaded word because it is so typically associated as a buzzword for the progressive left, which is stupid because it shouldn't be tied politically at all, as it is one of the most important ethical considerations in our modern world. And it boils down to respecting another person's body or their mind or their will or their freedom. And it branches out to all areas of life: relationships, politics, sex, medicine, belief systems. Consent simply means no one else gets to choose for you. And there's varying degrees of that, and we'll get into some of that today. But don't tune out just because you heard the word consent. The irony here is, especially when we look at Christianity, and that's what we're going to do today, it so often rails against godless immorality. But that religion, the principles, issues, commands, tenets of Christianity violates consent at nearly every level. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about how the scriptures, the system, the doctrine, and the traditions, at the very least, sidestep, if not straight up, sabotage true consent. And I'm going to give you 10 examples today. The first one, and I know this sounds almost pedantic at first, but really think about it here, is that we did not get to consent to be here. Now, this is true in a non-spiritual realm as well. And often when I bring this up, that's the first retort. Oh, well, under naturalism, under Big Bang cosmology, you didn't choose to be here either. Correct. That's just what it is. There isn't anyone to blame, and we just have to make the best of what we can. But an all-perfect, all-knowing, all-loving God creating creatures against their will, because it is against their will, against their consent if they couldn't consent. Now, you can say the same thing for parents and children, and the antinatalist will come in and we can have a whole nother conversation. And all I can say is I feel lucky for the ignorance I had when my wife and I conceived our 2 kids. Because knowing what I know now about the level of suffering, it would be a real moral dilemma for me. But again, that's such a huge conversation for another time. And unlike God, parents aren't all-knowing, and they can hope and expect and even do things to try to make sure that their kids avoid suffering. But under the Christian system, this God knows very well that the vast majority of the 100 billion people he has made so far, under the hypothetical that he actually made them, are going to burn in hell for eternity. Or a different opinion might be that they are going to be annihilated after a lifetime of suffering. Narrow is the way, after all. And I'm privileged. Oh my gosh, I have an amazing life. Not to say I don't have any struggles or sufferings of my own, but I have my health. My family has their health. We are not starving. I am not in a war zone. I have free time. Like, it's insane how good most of us who are watching this video have it compared to many people in the rest of the world currently and almost everyone throughout history. So before you say, no, life's pretty good, you're so selfish to act like it would have been better to not have been made. That may not be true for me, as I am happy that I'm here, but it is true for many, 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 many billions of people. Add on top of this, just in general, going back to more of the Christian concept, all of these people who were made without consent were also made under a curse, literally, that makes them evil and worthless before their creator. It makes them actually offensive to their creator. And again, most of them will end up burning in hell. So they didn't consent to being here, nor being part of this rigged system. And that's 100% what it is. Thursday, we talked a little bit about one of the dangerous harms of religious thinking, which is predestination, which I think is unavoidable with a triomni God. So yes, quite literally a rigged system. I can already feel the Christians typing out Romans 9:20, where God tells us we have no right to ask, why did you make me like this? That the molded has no right to say anything back to the molder. Except that whole stupid Potter analogy doesn't have sentience, doesn't have stakes. It's really one of the biggest issues with God's justice. If God is just, why design a world where non-consensual existence leads to eternal stakes, your eternal fate? So that's just number one. We went on it a little longer than I wanted to because, again, there's just such an easy opposition from the Christian who wants to turn their brain off and not have to wrestle with this. And I do think comparing it to parents and things like that falls short because of the foreknowledge, omniscience, all-powerfulness, things of that nature. So let's move on to number 2 because we have a longer list today and I'm going to try to go quick. What about the threat of hell? I know this one's a bit cliche, but we can't not talk about it in a conversation about the problems with Christianity and consent. John 3:18 says, whoever does not believe stands condemned already. Yeah, belief is framed as a choice, and that's what the Christian response is going to be to this point. But the alternative is eternal torment. So no, that's not much of a choice, is it? And that doesn't even get into the fact that we can't control what we believe, what information gets in front of us, how our brain works. All of that is outside of our consent, our will. It's like the opposite of informed consent. It's spiritual blackmail, which then the only thing you're left with is trying to excuse hell, and we've handled that so much. The next one is also one you may have thought of before. I hope to have a few in here that you haven't, but I want to be thorough. I still want to talk about the main 10 consent issues within Christianity, and number 3 is our original sin, our inherited guilt, generational or collective punishment. Let me read Romans 5:12 to you. Sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people. That's being born guilty with a punishment and curse for something that someone else did. Again, the opposite of you getting to consent to this rigged system. And then there's many procedures that follow it where we don't get to consent that work within the religion, like baptizing babies, which some people still believe is necessary for the forgiveness of sin because it says that in the Bible more than it actually says that it's a symbolic gesture, which means you're choosing the eternal afterlife for this thing that didn't even consent to be here. And you can pat yourself on the back and say, well, I'm giving them the better of the two. But then again, that's because you were only presented with 2 options because you still have no consent in the system in the first place. Consent requires personal responsibility, not ancestral punishment. It's just insane. A more on-the-nose example, we'll move into number 4 now, is the concept of a forced relationship, a forced feeling, a forced devotion, a commandment to love. See this video for all the issues with that. Love me or else destroys the concept of consent. And we know that in any human relationship, if that is what is on the table, we see how that robs the other person of the ability to even consent. God quite literally demands love and total obedience and total submission. Furthermore, rejecting this love as seen as rebellion or pride or ego. But love by definition must be freely given, not mandated, not using quite literally the biggest carrot and stick that could ever exist, heaven or hell, to try to twist the arm of the one. None of that has anything to do with consent. The next 2 numbers 5 and 6 are kind of linked. We'll start with number 5 here, which is sexual consent. Something it took the world a long time to understand, and even now is still so incredibly problematic for so many people, even in first world countries. And it's always been a problem. But worse than that, it's a created problem within Christianity, because we've heard what the immutable God of the universe has to say about it, and it's this in Deuteronomy 22:28 through 29. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, he shall marry her. Virginity then is a transaction. Women then are property. Pay off the father and you're all good to go. How is the woman consenting to this? She's not. And that's not a problem to this God. No matter how bad you want to think he's some amazing God that equals love, who cares about every single one of his little creatures, he doesn't. By his own commands. There's no way he could. And again, before you tell me that we're putting 21st century morals on something ancient, that would be an excuse that is still stupid if this was just a law of man, but under the Christian idea, this is a law given by God. Again, an immutable God. You always need to contend with this. And of course, we still have echoes of this today with purity culture, victim shaming, and all the other horrors that, can't we just grow up? It's why I cannot stand to be lectured morally by Christians just because I'm an atheist. You have no leg to stand on. But again, I said it was linked to number 6, so we'll move into that, which is marital submission or gender hierarchy. Again, 2 more things established by this immutable God of the universe. Ephesians 5:22 tells women to submit to men as men are supposed to submit to God. So all creatures are under submission, under obedience, forced obedience, commanded obedience. Therefore, the concept of consent within marriage gets overridden by duty, and this plays itself out in what equals marital rape, which an unnerving amount of Christians don't think exist. And so you have this result: centuries, millennia of theological justification for marital control and abuse and the subjugation of women in general. Now, I'm going to try to be kind of vulnerable on this next one because I still don't know how to think about all of this properly, where the line should be exactly. But I have child indoctrination without agency, which they can't have because they're children. Children don't have fully developed brains. They're not able to reason and understand in the same way that adults are. There's a reason that children, again, in better developed countries, have certain rights where they can't work, where they can't consent to marriage or sex and many other things. There's a responsibility that comes with that. And children are told in Christianity what to believe before they can understand it, before they can even question it. The Bible tells you to do this. And I just talked about this the other day, and I talked about how I had established some rituals within my family for my kids, and someone called me out in a comment that I'm doing the same thing. I'm pushing rituals on my kids that they don't get to consent to. And to a certain degree, that's true. All parents have to do things for their kids and have their kids do things that the kids are not consenting to. I think one of the biggest differences, though, is what the actual definition of indoctrination is, which is the process of teaching someone, in this case, a child, to accept a set of beliefs, keyword, uncritically. First of all, one of the examples I gave of a ritual that we kind of instilled in our household was when it rains, I get together with my kids and we're just quiet for a minute. But if one of my kids told me, Dad, I'm uncomfortable with this, we would talk it out. And if still uncomfortable, I would never force them to do it. And yes, I'm teaching my kids certain things that you could consider a belief, like it's good to share. But I'm not teaching them that uncritically. I'm not teaching that there's an objective source that commands it either. I'm showing the benefit of sharing, how it helps ingratiate you into your peer group so that you can be accepted, so that you can thrive. Also, from an empathetic response of when you want someone to share with you, that's thinking critically about what I'm teaching them. And that's an easy example that most of us could agree with. Sharing is good, religious or not religious. But parents in general get to kind of set those standards for kids until the kids get old enough to question and think on their own. So no, I don't consider what I teach my kids to be indoctrination. But do I make them eat their vegetables at dinner? Yeah, because I know what they don't know. And so that's what I meant. There are some tricky things around the word consent, some things that could be open for debate and conversation. But when it comes to religion, and again, specifically Christianity and children, the tactics that are used to coerce behavior and belief are not okay. They are objectively harmful. We have the studies, we have the data. Fear-based tactics like hell and the rapture and demon possession are awful on a child's psyche. And you can't get away from it because it's in the book. It's part of the doctrine. You might be the Christian parent that's more progressive and you think there's some age-appropriate things you're going to leave out for a while and you're only going to tell the good parts. That's also robbing them of the ability to consent because they don't have the full picture. It's a bait and switch. And by the time they're old enough for you to think that they're healthy enough to accept a doctrine like hell or original sin, which I don't think anyone could ever accept in a healthy manner, they're already convinced first that their God is just good, perfect, and loving because you have told them that over and over uncritically. You have not done comparative religion with them. You did not leave it up to them on what they wanted to believe. You have shoved that one book, the Bible, is the only source of perfect truth and all others fail in comparison. So I think there's a huge difference. And again, a major consent problem within Christianity when it comes to raising children. Moving on, number 8 would just be divine commands. We kind of talked about already the commandment to love, which is the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But the idea in general that we should be following divine commands as an overriding of personal autonomy is a consent problem. Just like God didn't ask for Abraham's input, Abraham didn't ask for Isaac's input, which is actually a really funny thing. You guys know I have this video where I went all in on the story of Abraham and the potential sacrifice of Isaac. And in doing so, in researching, what's really interesting is the version from Islam, which deals with Ishmael, not Isaac, and happens in a dream, not reality. Even within the dream, Ishmael gives consent. Now, you could still argue that a child can't give consent, and there's different ideas about how old Ishmael is in the Islamic version of that story. But it's light years ahead already of the Christian version of that story, which is just representative of the larger issues within Christianity that is my way or the highway to hell. And whatever God says is good must be good. Whatever God commands must be done. Whatever his will is must come to fruition. None of that has a damn thing to do with consent. These last two are a bit more abstract and out of the box. And again, when I was trying to come up with my list, I had so many that were more like this. So I wanted to kind of start with the more biblical examples, the more obvious ones. But here's kind of two bonus ones. What about historical conversions in general by force or manipulation? I think about the Crusades. I think about forced baptisms during colonization. I think about the Inquisition. This is a lot of things Christianity is doing to promote and further their religion. Promote is not even a fair word. To force their religion unconsensually. Convert or die is not exactly an open invitation. And the last one is similar. It's just a little bit more modern focus. We could just call it evangelism. Evangelism that ignores boundaries. What is the greatest commission in the entire Bible? It's literally called the Great Commission, Matthew 28:19. Go and make disciples of all nations. It's a great excuse for things like the Crusades, the Inquisition, Manifest Destiny, etc. But it's a lot more than just, hey, did you know this? Missionary work steals culture. Also, biblically, doctrinally, if you're someone that wants to try to fix the issue with how many people will have gone to hell simply because they never had a chance to know, many Christians will tell you that if someone doesn't have a chance to know, it's kind of this guaranteed passage that they're not going to be judged that way. Or we can get into concepts like general revelation. But as soon as a missionary shows up and presents the gospel, that person who has no good reason to believe this stranger story at all compared to their own indoctrination of their own myths and religions is now going straight to hell. So you're quite literally giving people bad evidence and little reason to convert, but putting them in a position, again, under these pretenses of Christianity, to end up in hell. Christianity justifies pressuring others, annoying others, invading others' spaces, disrupting others' activities because, well, they have the good news. They have the only truth. They care about you. They love you. They don't want to see you burn in hell. And so they can trample you. There are many, many, many justifications happening in this country right now from a political vantage point that is using scripture and Christian doctrine as a way to override someone's rights. Saying no thanks to faith is very seldomly respected. It's treated as a problem to solve, someone's objective. That's disgusting. So there's just 10 examples. I think we went through them pretty quickly of issues with consent within Christianity. And again, if we can agree that consent is typically a good thing, but 2 billion people have a belief that tells them it's okay to override that because they know the truth, that's incredibly problematic, especially again for a religion that claims to be A, the truth, and B, the only moral truth. Yikes. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you Tuesday with a new video. And until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn, my Humanist heroes, Craig, James, Jarrod, Kristi, and Matthew, my Atheist advocates, Aquitar, Caleb, Dan, David, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Julie, Malcom, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you believe in the mission of this channel, please consider joining these fine people.